Have you ever felt like you're doing everything you're supposed to with your ad campaigns? You're testing, you're iterating, you're gathering all this data, but the profits just aren't there? Well, you are not alone. There's this paradox at the very heart of the advertising industry, and it's this. What if the very thing we're all taught will lead to success is actually the exact reason most campaigns fail? Today, we're going to dig into a method that flips that conventional wisdom completely on its head. It's called the three-angle ad method, and it's all about how strategic, focused simplification, not more complexity, is the real key to unlocking profit.
Just let that sink in for a second. The more ideas you test, the more likely you are to fail. Now, I know this goes against pretty much everything we've been told about A/B testing, that whole philosophy of always be testing. But the truth is, our constant chase for more options and more variations is often what's crippling our results. The very effort we think is helping us, it ends up being our single biggest obstacle.
So if that's the problem, what's the alternative? What if instead of adding more complexity, we just stripped it all away? What if the real path to scaling our ads and slashing our wasted budget isn't about doing more, but about strategically doing far, far less? That's the core question we are going to answer as we break down this incredibly powerful framework. All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to unpack the problem, the testing paradox, and the ad fatigue crisis. Then we'll dive right into the solution, the 3 pillars of motivation, and the simplicity engine that makes them so effective. From there, I'll walk you through a step-by-step guide to mastering this method. And finally, we'll wrap up with a core insight that I promise will change how you think about advertising forever.
Okay, let's start with this idea of the testing paradox. It's a simple but really powerful concept. The more you test, the worse your results can get. I know, it sounds completely backward, but it all comes down to how our brains are wired to make decisions and, frankly, how modern ad platforms actually work.
At the heart of this paradox is something called decision paralysis, and you've felt this yourself, for sure. When you're looking at 2 or 3 clear options, making a choice is pretty easy. But when you're faced with, say, 10, 15, or 20 slight variations of something, what happens? Your brain kind of freezes up. You get overwhelmed. You're not sure which is the right choice, so you just end up making no choice at all. And that is exactly what's happening to your customers when they see a dozen different ads for your product. And this is where it starts to get really expensive. A lot of marketers fall into this trap, this illusion of volume, thinking that more testing is always better. So they'll create 20 different ads, believing they're being super thorough. But what's really happening? They're just spreading their budget so thin that none of the ads get enough spend to prove if they're actually working or not. So you're left with a pile of inconclusive data, a wasted budget, and an audience that's just as confused as you are. Now, this isn't just some psychological quirk. It is a massive, real-world problem that is costing businesses a fortune, especially right now. See, the old way of doing things, just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall to see what sticks, it just doesn't work anymore. The market is way too crowded, and people are just plain tired of being bombarded with messages that aren't relevant to them. And this chart really shows you just how much waste we're talking about. In a typical campaign, a staggering 80% of the budget is spent on what we call the trivial many, the ads that just don't work. Only 20% of the money is actually driving real results with a winning message. The entire goal of this method is to flip that ratio on its head. So, to win in this new environment, what do you need? It really boils down to 2 things. You need to be fast, and you need to be decisive with your testing. And your message has to be incredibly relevant. Anything less just gets drowned out by all the noise. And the solution to this whole mess? Well, it wasn't found in some new marketing textbook or the latest software. It was found in a fundamental law of human psychology, a law that explains exactly how we make decisions and provides the scientific foundation for this entire strategy. And that law is called Hick's law. It's a simple but profound idea. The more choices you give someone, the longer it takes them to make a decision. And in the fast-paced world of advertising, time is everything. A user who has to stop and think too hard is a user who is just going to keep on scrolling. Hick's law is why simplicity isn't just a nice design choice, it is a winning business strategy.
So if we know we have to simplify, the next question is, what do we focus on? The answer is the 3 pillars. It's a framework that covers the 3 core reasons why any human being buys anything. This isn't just a list of tactics. Think of it as a complete map of human motivation for any purchase.
The whole 3-angle method is basically a simple 3-step machine. First, you define your message based on the 3 pillars. Second, you enforce a clean separation between them for testing. And third, you disproportionately allocate your budget to the clear winner. So let's start with the most important part, the pillars themselves.
The first pillar is often the most powerful. It taps into our most primal instincts, our urgent need to solve a problem that's bothering us right now. It's all about pain.
The pain angle is all about solving an immediate problem. It's built on a psychological principle called loss aversion, which basically means we are far more motivated to avoid a loss than we are to achieve a gain. So instead of talking about some bright, shiny future, this angle focuses on fixing something that's broken right now. It's like having a headache. You're not thinking about how great you'll feel later, you just want that pain to stop, now.
Okay, the second pillar is the total opposite of pain. It's not about what you want to get away from, it's about what you want to move towards. It's about aspiration, transformation, and becoming that better version of yourself. It's all about desire. The desire angle is all about aspiration. It's your job to paint a picture of a better future, a future where your customer has achieved their goals. It's not about fixing a problem, it's about making a dream a reality. Whether that dream is getting a promotion, running a marathon, or just feeling more confident in their own skin.
And that brings us to our third and final pillar. This is the one that appeals to our rational side, the part of our brain that needs proof before it's willing to commit. This one is all about logic.
The logic angle is for the thinkers, the skeptics, the people who need to know how it all works. See, after you've hooked them with an emotional angle like pain or desire, you have to give them a reason to believe you. And that's where logic comes in. It's the proof, the data, the social proof, the evidence that shows your product actually does what you claim it does.
So pain, desire, and logic. These are the three pillars of what we call the simplicity engine. When you limit your testing to only these three core motivators, you activate some really powerful psychological principles that make your ads incredibly effective. So let's go under the hood and look at the psychology that makes this engine purr.
This slide really says it all. On the left, you've got the old way, the trivial many. Testing 10 or more angles creates high cognitive load. It's just too much for the brain to process, which leads to slow decisions and low conversion. But on the right, you have the vital few. Just 3 simple test angles, which means low cognitive load, fast decisions, and high conversion. It's that simple.
The second psychological principle that's working for us here is the relevance heuristic. Basically, this is a mental shortcut our brains use to filter the absolutely insane amount of information we see every day. We are literally hardwired to pay attention to things that seem personally relevant and to completely ignore everything else. It's basically an attention spam filter.
And that is the absolute magic of the 3-angle method. By focusing on pain, desire, and logic, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a message that resonates deeply with everyone in your audience. Why? Because everyone is motivated by at least one of these 3 things. This makes your ads hyper-relevant, which tells the ad platforms to show them to more people, which gets you a higher quality score and ultimately more clicks for less money.
Okay, so we've covered the why. That's the theory. Now let's get into the how. Here is the step-by-step blueprint for putting the 3-angle method into practice and making it work for you, starting today. It's a dead simple 3-step process. First, you isolate and build out your core 3 messages. Second, you enforce a strict separation between them to get clean data. And third, you measure the results with one and only one specific metric to find the undisputed winner.
Step 1 is all about ruthless focus. You have to resist the temptation to blend your messages. You need to identify the single most powerful pain point your product solves, the single most compelling desire it fulfills, and the single clearest logical reason it works. One of each, that's it. Clarity here is absolutely everything.
Step 2 is non-negotiable. You have to keep your 3 angles completely separate. Think of it like a clean science experiment. You wouldn't mix 2 chemicals together and then try to figure out which one caused the reaction, right? It's the same with your ads. If you mix a little bit of the pain message into your desire ad, your data is contaminated. You'll never know what's actually working. All right, step 3 is where the rubber meets the road. To find out what's working, you need to focus on one number and one number only, your cost per acquisition, or CPA. Simply put, how much are you paying to get one new customer for each angle? Forget about likes, shares, or clicks for now. The only thing that matters in this initial test is how much you're spending to make a sale.
And here's what that looks like in the real world. Let's say you run your test, and these are your results. The pain angle is bringing in customers for just $25. The desire angle is costing you $85. And the logic angle is a wallet-crushing $110. The decision here is not a debate, it's a no-brainer. You scale the winner, and you cut the losers immediately.
Now, this might be the hardest part of the entire process psychologically.
You have to be willing to kill your darlings. You have to be okay with getting rid of 2/3 of the ads you just worked on. But this is not failure. This is success. The whole point of the process is to find the one thing that works and mercilessly cut everything that doesn't. This discipline is what separates the campaigns that scale from the ones that just burn through cash.
And once you have your winner, you have to act fast. You take every single dollar from those 2 losing angles and you reallocate it immediately to the winning angle. This is called disproportionate allocation. It's how you go from slow, incremental growth to explosive, nonlinear results. You've found the signal in the noise, and now it's time to amplify it.
So after all that, what's the big insight? What's the core idea you should walk away with? It's a simple but profound shift in how we think about advertising, efficiency, and profit.
The key takeaway is this: efficiency is not about comprehensive effort. It's not about working harder or testing more. It's about strategic focus. It's the difference between using a sledgehammer and using a scalpel. One is messy and wasteful. The other is precise, effective, and incredibly profitable.
At the end of the day, this whole method is just the practical application of a scientific law. It's the cold, hard logic of Hick's law used as a tool to cut through the natural human tendency toward indecision. It's about using simplicity as a weapon against the chaos of too much choice.
And that is why this system works so reliably. It's not about testing superficial tactics or trendy formats that change every 6 months. It's about rigorously testing the fundamental drivers of human behavior that have been true for thousands of years: pain, desire, and logic.
And maybe this is the most powerful idea of all. The best marketing doesn't push people, it pulls them toward value. And it does that because it makes the decision effortless. It only ever asks them to process one of the 3 core reasons they would ever need to buy in the first place.